Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. Do the same with the Grizzly Gentleman, 10% off at checkout on your fantastic beard products. Or you could shop via the TCG Player affiliate link in the description down below to help support the show. And last but of course not least, you can go to Grey Viking Games with the affiliate link below to pillage some sweet arena codes. What is up, Planeswalker 6 back with more Magic the Gathering Arena and some very slightly new introduction things. I spent a decent amount of today redoing some stuff, modifying OBS transitions, etc, etc. So today, I didn't really have the time necessary to have an EDH deck tech that I would want to do, but then I realized it might be best, at least initially. I think my knob got twisted a little bit. I turned down my gain a little. All right. Yeah, okay, this sounds better. Anyway, so I thought today what I would do is I would go over the 21 decks that I currently have on Aether Hub, many of which like a third of which I actually have IRL, but the remainder of which I plan on getting soon so that I can continue making gameplay videos and other deck techs every Monday going forward. So, what I would like for you to do this video is to look at all of these decks. I'm going to give a very, very brief overview of the object of the deck, what I consider to be its overall power level. You can see the configuration of the deck here. You can see the price. Oh, right. There we go. You can see the price as well and the curve. So you get to see a lot of the general things about the deck. And then what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what is the first deck tech you want to see for EDH on this channel going forward, because I've done EDH deck techs. And two, what's the format you would prefer? So initially I was going to do the Law and Order deck tech, in which I would sort the cards into groups based on kind of what they kind of relate to the show Law and Order or crime in general. So there would be things like the prison, there would be the courthouse, where you'd have things like judges. So for example, like this would be the jail, this would be in the jail, like this would be the judgment or the judicial office, and then this would be like on the beat or like during the investigation or something like that, something to those effects. And I was going to do that because I thought it'd be fun and different. Another way I could do it is that I have the physical deck with me, and I'm recording the physical deck. And what I do instead is I just I separate them by their goal. So, you know, if I have 3 counter spells, I have a little group of counter spells, and I say, all right, these are the counter spells in the deck. Then I go over, like, these are the utility creatures, these are the beaters, if the deck has any, maybe here are some tax elements, etc., right? So that's one way of doing it. And then I could, once again, this is in physical form, I could just go through the CMC, which is what is displayed here. I could go through the card type, where it's just like, all right, here are all of the creatures, here are all of the enchantments, all of the planeswalkers, etc. And that would all be physical. Or I could do something that involves just recording it on my computer, where I just walk through them more similar to the arena style. Now, I'm not sure which I personally would prefer, because I've watched all of those and they're all just deck techs to me. So what I'd like to know is, what do you think? How would you prefer to have the deck tech laid out? That's a question. And then of course the next question is, what is the first of these which you would like to see? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link to a straw poll that includes all of these, and then all you do is vote on the one that you would like to see first. So anyway, Kozilek the Great Distortion is my monocolor deck, or my no color deck. I do not have this at all in real life, so I would plan on actually buying the cards for this. You can see that it is a decent amount of artifacts here, mainly because we need artifacts to ramp out our Eldrazi, and this is an Eldrazi tribal deck. This is not meant to be anything else but an Eldrazi tribal deck. I'm not trying to do funny artifact combo shenanigans, although technically I think there is a combo in here. But it's just an Eldrazi tribal deck. This is my Death and Taxes EDH deck. We have 8.5 Tails. I love this card. I've made a deck tech on this in the channel before, but many things have changed since then. As you can see, a relatively normal looking curve. I have essentially all of this deck. Just some of the newer cards I have not actually purchased just yet, but I can very easily do that. Geese and Shuffle Friends is the zombie tribal deck, very similar to the previous one. This is one I've done on the channel before, and I have the majority of the deck for. I mean, it's zombie tribal. that's about it. That's the gist of this deck. Is you pump out zombies and you have fun doing it. I should mention, and this is something you'll notice with all of my decks. I think if it has a Soul Ring in this, it means that the deck is meant to be a little bit more competitive. If it doesn't have a Soul Ring, it means that whenever possible, I ask people to not play with Soul Ring. But if they do, I just plop in a Soul Ring. I take out something and I put a Soul Ring in. I tend to dislike Soul Ring and his friends, and that's just something that I do. Lavinia in Order. So this is the Law and Order deck, and essentially the point of this deck is to make something that is reminiscent of the show Law and Order, because I used to watch Law and Order SVU constantly, and I just thought, hey, this seems like it'd be funny. Azorius has a lot of the kind of law stuff, so I could probably figure out how to do this. And for what it's worth, every card except for technically a few, like Talisman of Progress, Azorius Signet, you can't really have a justification, but every other card I have a justification for like how it would fit into a crime drama. So that's kind of the gist of this deck. And for what it's worth, it's relatively budget. I mean, this is, technically $200, but theoretically speaking, some of that might be due to art, some of that might be due to a whole host of things that could be easily taken down to a full, like only 100, which is easily budget. So this is a budget deck if people are interested in, and it's not terrible. Like, it functions, which is the thing that I was the most surprised about. And I do have this in paper. This is what I was planning on doing. Next up is Daxos Enchantments. I do not have this in paper. This curve is atrocious. But the point of this deck essentially is to have an army of enchantments. You have a sort of Pillow Fort style in here. We have a little bit of tax elements because there are some pretty decent enchantment creatures from the OG Theros block, because wizards at the time cared about mono white. And it's just overall, in my opinion, a super fun deck to play enchantments with. I don't think it's very good, but it is, in my opinion, very fun. Rexiel. I think another thing you'll notice about a lot of my decks are meant to be built around a theme, and I do that because I prefer when I like to work within limitations that I give myself. I think it leads to more creative deck building, and theoretically leads to more unique decks. So Rexiel Arisen Deep is a Lovecraftian horror deck. I do not have this currently in paper, but as you can see, it's not exactly hard to buy. It's a pretty fun deck, in my opinion, even though it's not necessarily the best, because the idea is I have to essentially equate, similar to the Lavinia in Order deck. All of these cards need a reason for some sort of like Lovecraftian theme, right? I'm playing Curse of the Bloody Tome. Now, technically, that does work nicely with Rexiel, but otherwise, it's not really a great card, right? We have something like a Memory Erosion, Sudden Spoiling, Atris Oracle Half-Truths, and Finn Mutineer, right? A lot of these cards seem very, kind of work to a theme, but they're kind of disparate. But that's what I like about this deck, is that it tells a story while I play it, and that's in my opinion super fun. For what it's worth, I do consider modifying this from being Rexiel to being Garuda, just because Garuda might be a little stronger if I modify the deck, but for right now, Rexiel remains the monstrous king. Scorpion God. I had this in real life, and I have done a deck tech on this. I think some things have changed. I've changed my minds on a few things. Like, I don't think I had Stigma Lasher initially, but it's a fun deck. The main issue with this one, frankly speaking, is that you have to kind of start to get to the dregs really early. Wizards does not seem to give a crap about -1/-1 counters, and they just love pushing +1/+1 counters. And I don't understand it. I love +1/+1 counters, as you'll see in a moment once we get to a different deck. But I also love, probably equally as much, maybe even more, -1/-1 counters, because I feel like you can do so many more. You can do just as many interesting things, actually. You can work around giving your own creatures minus counters, which is what we saw in Amonkhet. And obviously you like to give your opponent's creatures -1 counters. And then with +1/+1 counters, you obviously have a lot of cards that give your own creatures. And there are a couple of cards, there are actually not as many as I would have expected, cards that give your opponents +1/+1 counters, right? So like they can do the same things. I just wish that we had more -1s. And unfortunately we don't have a ton, which means, we play things like Grim Affliction and Sadistic Obsession. But it's still a super fun deck. Sylvia and Corvath, the Burning Crusade. This deck is, you'll see another theme. I really like dragons and tribal. This is a knight and dragon tribal deck. I believe 15 of the creatures are knight affiliated and 15 of the creatures are dragon affiliated. Now, if you talk with someone who plays partner decks, typically they'll tell you, and I agree with this for the most part, that you should be running partners in such a way that the deck is built to really help one of the partners, right? The deck is built around one of these partners. The additional partner is meant to be, supplementary. But that's not what I did, because I like to have the self-imposed restrictions, and I decided to have 15 of the creatures, half of the creatures be about knights and half the creatures be about dragons, and it works well enough that I enjoy myself. You'll essentially the earlier game is a bunch of knights, and the later game is a bunch of dragons. A lot of really cool, interesting, like we could just see right here, we have Sarkhan Fireblood for dragons, and we have History of Benalia for knights. It's a really fun deck. That is also, it's not gonna break the bank. Sisay's Girls Night Out. This deck is one of the decks I've had for a decently long time, and I absolutely love it. And the reason I love it is I get to just play with, I get to have a restriction on myself, right? Captain Sisay is, it's a tutor deck, right? She can grab any of the legendary cards in your deck. But instead of deciding to just play literally the best of the best, I'm choosing to play the best of the best that relates specifically to a lady in Magic. All of the legendary cards in here are directly related to an MTG female character. Most of the other cards are also related to a female character. So, but not all, right? Arcane Signet, for what it's worth, I recognize that's probably a male hand, but just like many of the decks, you have to put your justification somewhere, and I typically decide that cards that are very, very good and support are sufficient, or are fine. But there really isn't anything that is, super egregious, right? We have like Court of Grace and Court of Bounty, not really tied to anything. We have Dromoka's Command because it's about Dromoka. We have, Sword of the Endless is legendary, but still, Eternal Witness is a lady, Night of Autumn is a lady. So, even the art for Route, right? This is specifically the Elesh Norn art for Route, because this is the card that I would have. So, it's meant to be a very fun take on Captain Sisay. It's Girls Night Out. I just personally, it's one of my favorite decks, because every time a new set comes out, I get to say, what are the new ladies? Are there any cool new female characters in Magic? And I can add them to Girls Night Out, and it's just super cool. For what it's worth, I did consider making a Guys Night Out with both Kethis as well as the vampire dude from Dominaria, but I didn't like the way the deck turned out. It wasn't as fun. It wasn't as good either. My Oloro Immortal, yes, that is a reference, My Immortal, is a control deck that uses a bunch of life gain and life loss. That's pretty much it. The Oloro deck is very, very typical Oloro deck. It's just an annoying deck. It has control elements. It uses its life to its advantage. Blah blah blah. And I shouldn't like make it sound super boring or anything. But if you've seen an Oloro deck, it would be very similar to this. Not the same, but it'd be very similar, right? It has the same underpinnings. I do have the base deck of this, but I do not believe I've updated it, like upgraded it much, if at all. after buying the pre-constructed words. Bolas's Birthright. Now, for the lovers of the channel, this is a Bolas theme deck. Not a ton of cards that reference Lord Bolas that are like actually decent. So the justification is difficult. And for what it's worth, it's become even harder because each new set, this deck doesn't actually get anything. The reason it doesn't get anything is Bolas is in a prison right now. So it's just, yeah, essentially this deck is kind of gonna be stagnant for a while, but I don't think that I'll ever truly take it apart. What is likely gonna happen is possibly as time goes on, I might transition it into becoming a Grixis discard deck that still utilizes either Nicol Bolas or the Ravager, or like full on big Bolas, wherever he is. There he is. Yeah, super flavorful deck, right? We got a lot of things in here that directly reference Nicol Bolas, essentially as much as I could, and it's filled out with kind of discard stuff and general control things. Don't have this in real life. Mael Beef Mode, card I have in real life, card I've played several times, or deck I've played several times, deck I have done decks on, deck I love. But something you'll notice is that this is not playing the conventional Mael game, because the conventional Mael game is you play just the objectively best, biggest things. I don't do that. I tried to make this like kind of nature theme. You know, we have a couple of gods. You know, those are awe-inspiring, and the behemoths of Naya were called gods. You know, I play big dinosaurs, maybe some worms, some. I mean, this is a beast. Obviously, is the main one I like, but Wizards is not printing as many beasts as I'd prefer. But whatever. So you know, it's more like primal. I don't think I'm running very many elementals, if at all, but maybe I could justify them. But the cards in here like have to feel right, because I prefer to make my decks different. So anyway, yeah, Mael, she's great, and I don't think I have too many upgrades for her, so she would be relatively easy to do. Kelith and Rayhan, +1/+1 counter stack. Now this deck, I don't have. I initially ran with a Ikra and Rayhan +1/+1 counter stack, and I didn't feel it. You know, I didn't love it, and I was thinking, you know, how can I make an Abzan count, or how can I make a +1/+1 counter stack? And I was thinking, because I plan on having one of each color combination eventually, and I was thinking, well, I do need an Abzan deck. So what can Abzan do? And I was thinking, you know, there's Carador or graveyard decks in general, reanimation decks. I was like, I already have Muldrotha, which we'll get to, but you know, that didn't feel like, I didn't want another graveyard deck, especially considering, you know, Gisa plays into that. So I was like, I don't know, I don't love it. And I saw the counters and I was like, well, I have been thinking that my Golgari deck isn't great. What does white add? White adds a lot. And when I saw Kelith from the Commander whatever, Commander Legends, I was like, yes, let me tell you. Going turn 1 Hardened Scales into turn 2 Kelith into turn 3 Rayhan is nuts. It gets out of control fast, and I absolutely love it. This is an aggressive deck, as you can probably tell by this curve. It's an aggressive deck that just aims to do the dumbest of things with +1/+1 counters and kills your opponent like that. I love it. It's just a ton of fun. It's also the newest, for what it's worth. I do not have this deck, although it doesn't seem like it would cost that much. Ruhan's Gear Montage. I also really wanted to play, to have an equipment deck, and there's literally one reason. I wanted to play all of the swords. I own all of the swords. Yes, I can say that with confidence. I own all of the swords, and I really wanted to play with all of the swords. But I couldn't justify putting them in my 8.5 tails deck. That one only plays the best of the best swords. And I was like, okay, well, who can wield these things nicely? I considered Saskia, but Saskia I kind of want to save for other things, and I realized green doesn't have a ton. It doesn't bring a ton to the table. So I knew it would be base white-red, right? I already had a white-red deck. Because remember, I'm trying to have one of each color combination. I don't want to double up. So I had one of each, I had white-red. Okay, well, let's add some colors to it. White, red, blue. Long ago, I had a Zedruu deck. It fell off for me. I don't really care too much about it. So I'm like, okay, Zedruu's kind of dead, so maybe we'll do white, blue, red. We'll see. White, blue, black. Well, I already have an Allure. Or, sorry. White, red, blue. White, red, black. Well, I already have a Kalia deck. White, red, green. I have Nael. Okay, well, that's not great. What if we add multiple colors? So I considered Saskia, I considered Brea, but then I looked at black, like what black could add. Black also didn't add a ton. There were a couple things here and there, but black didn't add a ton. Green didn't add a ton, black didn't add a ton. Blue added a decent amount because blue likes to do things with artifacts. So I decided, okay, let's do Jeskai. And then I looked at the commanders that I could use, and I realized there was only one option. It's Ruhan. Because Ruhan, he just attacks. He just attacks. You don't have any say where he goes, and that's just fun. Technically, I could be playing, I could be using like Narset or something like that. No, Ruhan is great. It's fun. It's what you love. This is an artifact Voltron deck. You gear up Ruhan and you murder your opponent. We're running like I think we're running every good 2-drop ramp artifact. So that on turn 2, we can play the ramp artifact, on turn 3, we can play Ruhan, and then on turn 4, we expect to have 5 mana, so we can play one of our swords onto Ruhan. That's the game plan with Ruhan. That's what Ruhan wants to do every single time. I don't have this deck built, but a lot of this price, I have these cards, because a lot of them share with 8.5 Tails. Muldrotha, the Queen of Value. I don't have this deck, IRL. I have a Muldrotha Precon, that has been upgraded for what it's worth. So I have a decent number of these cards, pretty much none of the newer ones. This is, if you've seen my Muldrotha Historic Brawl, and you like that deck, this is essentially that, but better. It could possibly still use some upgrading. Like, I'm not sure I love Commander Sphere, although the idea of just like cracking it a bunch is nice. But the point of this deck is just eternal value. Imagine, for just a moment, you have Muldrotha out, and your opponent tries to attack you. You sack Spore Frog, like, nah. Then you play Spore Frog again, and your opponent tries to attack you, and you say, nah. It's great. It's real great. I love it. It's great. No, it's just, it's an absolute ton of fun, and it's just a ton of value. You get to play with things that you don't typically play with, such as like Seal of Primordium, because you would rather have cards, right, that are going to the graveyard that are permanents because you can get them back, right? This could theoretically just be a naturalize or something, but where's the fun in that? Also, I'm playing Elephant Grass, and Elephant Grass is hilarious. Riku. Does it say the green reflection? Oh, because I have 2 Riku decks. This Riku deck is meant to be a clone deck. You essentially play Riku, and the point in this version is to clone your opponent's creatures, your creatures, and just get a lot of value. The idea, you just win. There are technically a couple of instant win cons. You have Splinter Twin, you got Kiki-Jiki, Zal's Conscripts, but you also just have like Biovisionary. But that's not like the main point of the deck. The main point of the deck is to just get a lot of clones. You also have things like Skewed Swarm and Spawn Wraith, where you just have things that they just keep multiplying. I got chills, they're multiplying. You just want to have a ton of the same card. It's great. It's absolutely great. It's a blast, especially when your opponent, is just playing good creatures and you just keep cloning their own creatures. You just use your creatures against them. Oh, it's magnifique. The Reflection, on the other hand, is a spell deck. The idea with this one is you copy strong spells. You obviously also have some theft in here to once again steal what your opponent is doing, because I find that hilarious. Turning your opponent's cards against them. And yeah, you just play cool copy cards and cool strong cards that you want to copy. Mainly things like Bribery, where you steal your opponent's stuff. I do technically have the bases of both of these decks. However, these are very far removed from what I currently have. I have played the green version a lot more than the red version. Kalia, oh my god, there's a Soul Ring. The point with Kalia is to kill your opponents. I believe that this deck is 10-10-10. Angels, Demons, Dragons. The 10 best angels, the 10 best demons, the best 10 dragons. Asterisk. The best that still allow me to have some semblance of a curve. I'm hoping that with Kaldheim, I'm able to put a few more kind of mid-costing angels, demons, and dragons that are still good enough to see play in Kaalia. But the point of this deck is very, very similar to Ruhan. I want to, on turn 2, play a 2-mana, the words are hard, 2-mana rock that ramps. I don't have Arcane Signet in here for some reason. That is an oops. That will be rectified. And then you play Kaalia on turn 3, and on turn 4, you murder your opponent by attacking in and getting something like a Runescar Demon. Something, a good old-fashioned Runescar Demon, something like that. So, very, very meme deck. It's very mean. For what it's worth, this deck gets shut down hard if people keep killing Kaalia. It's very feast or famine. Atraxa. Now, Atraxa is one of the most played commander decks. But can you spot a pattern in the cards that are in this deck? This is the Angel of Completion. This is not a Planeswalker deck. This is not technically an Infect deck. This is not a +1/+1 counter deck, blah, blah, blah. This is a Phyrexian theme deck. Yeah, baby. The point of this deck essentially is to play a bunch of cards that are directly referencing Phyrexia. Doesn't matter if they're necessarily good. Doesn't matter if they're necessarily bad. I'm just playing cards that reference Phyrexia. That's it. This can kill with Infect because there are a decent number of cards in here with Infect because obviously New Phyrexia has Infect. But you know, it's not just about that. It's just about bringing glory to Phyrexia. So we have the Eldrazi, we have Bolas, and we have Phyrexia, the 3 overlords of the multiverse. Next up, we have Chromat. This is Chromat's Consortium. This is the closest one to a Grand, I believe. I have this deck, mostly. There are some upgrades that I haven't done yet, but the point of this deck is to play one of our to play our 24 Planeswalkers and just win the game. It's a control deck that just uses Planeswalkers. You cast Planeswalkers and you just outvalue your opponent. That's it. That's Chromat. Chromat, I almost never play Chromat. Technically speaking, it would be much better if I put Progenitus as the commander of this deck. But it doesn't feel right. Chromat was the first commander of this deck. And even though putting Progenitus at the helm is just better, almost objectively, essentially. I mean, you can technically play this on turn 5. Progenitus you can't play until later. But it would just be so rude to do that to my boy Chromat. But if you want to see some stupid Super Friends action, vote for this one. And then last but absolutely not least is another 5-color commander because I can't help myself. This one I don't have, but I don't care that I'm doubling up on 5-color. This deck is awesome because dragons are awesome. Dang it. This is the Ur-Dragon, a dragon tribal deck. That includes, fun fact, a lot of dragons. That's it. This deck it plays dragons. There's nothing else in that. You play dragons. So, what I would love for you all to do is let me know what the style of deck tech you would prefer to see is in the comments, and linked in the pinned comment will be a straw poll about which of these 21 decks you would like to see first. I believe that is everything. So what I would like to do is thank my lovely patrons, especially Fogwind, Malik, and Balater for the continued support. If you'd like to join them, support the show, you'll find links in the description below. Hope, of course, you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, I will be one.